What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Pitching Ninja's filthiest pitches of the day. Remember, before we get to those pitches, hit that subscribe button. Join Ninja Nation. If you don't subscribe, do you really like baseball? And now, without further ado, here are my filthiest pitches of the day. I'm going to start with Noah Syndergaard, who had 4 Ks in 3 innings. He relied on this nasty slider as well as his fastballs. And check out this sword he got on Tucker. Just tied him up in knots. He also had a couple good curveballs, and here's an overlay of Syndergaard's fastball and curveball. And you can see how they look the same on the way to the plate, but that curveball dives. The other thing that jumps out at me in this overlay is how much Hensley thought that curveball was a fastball. You can see how he completes his swing before that curveball gets there because it's 17 miles an hour slower than the fastball. This shows you that tunneling works and that hitters have a really hard time picking up spin. My filthiest pitcher of the day yesterday, of course, was Justin Verlander. Verlander had 6 Ks in 5 innings and gave up only 1 run, and that run was a home run to Schwarber in the first at-bat of the game. After that home run, Verlander really settled down and dominated. The biggest difference was he found his slider. In Game 1, he threw his slider 12 times and had 0 whiffs on it. This game, he threw it 28 times and had 7 whiffs on it. Here are a couple of charts that show the difference of Verlander's slider between Game 1 and Game 5. And that slider's a really important pitch for Verlander because opponents are only hitting 188 against it with a 35% whiff rate on the season. And he needed it because the Phillies were really focusing on hammering his fastball, really trying to get on top of it because of what Christian Javier did to him the previous game. Verlander said the key to getting his slider back was fixing his mechanics because he thought he was being a little too tentative in Game 1.
Thank goodness all the mechanical work that I did in between starts was able to get my slider where I needed it and was able to kind of lean on that when I needed to, and especially once I realized these guys were adjusting very quickly and decided to try to get on top of the fastball today, really the first time through. So I think it was more the 4th inning. Early in the 4th, I realized I've been being a bit too quick, and I've been getting off my back leg a little early ever since the calf injury in September, and my off-speed stuff really suffered. Taking 9 days off in between starts, I feel like contributed to that a little bit. So, it really exacerbated the issue with my first start and just my off-speed stuff. Alex, as you know, when it's rolling off my hand and just not, it tells you guys, it's basically telegraphing your pitches. And that I got hurt a lot on my off-speed stuff in the first game, and I knew I needed to fix something and fix it in a hurry. And thank goodness the adjustments I made was able to sharpen up my off-speed stuff.
I did a side-by-side of Verlander's slider from Game 5 and Game 1. And while it's hard to see, you can see how much more committed he was to his slider on the left. You can see his leg higher in the air, as well as his throwing shoulder more heavily rotated down, with his glove flying up more, meaning he was slightly staying on the pitch better. And by doing that, he can get his slider down in the zone. To show you how important Verlander's slider is, here's a sequence to Real Muto. And you can see him really pounding that slider down in the zone and then throwing a fastball over it. And here's an overlay that shows how that fastball and slider work together. So after seeing a couple of sliders, you get that fastball and it really jumps on you, because that tunneling with the slider makes you delay your decision to swing. Now, it wasn't just Verlander's slider that was dominant. He also had a wicked curveball. You can see here he totally barrel-locked Schwarber with this curveball. And while you might say, why didn't he swing at that? Here's Verlander's curveball paired up with an elevated fastball, and you can see how much higher that curveball is than the fastball. So as a hitter, you're saying, I'm not going to swing at that because it looks like a really elevated heater. But then it drops right back into the strike zone. Just a great game by Verlander, picking up his first World Series win of his career. Here's some more of Verlander talking about this outing.
What were you thinking after that second pitch and Schwarber hit that ball out?
As a pitcher, it's like, I can't curse right here right now. But what can I say? Can I say damn? I don't know. I immediately once that happens, you just go turn the page. You just have to, and that's not going to be indicative of the rest of the day. It's just not. good hitter. The ball ran a little bit up and away, and he, the guy had almost 50 homers in the regular season. He's got 50 now in the postseason. Like, that's what he does, and that's not going to be indicative of my day. I'm not going to let that ruin my day. We already had a run, thank goodness, so it's a tie game. Let's pretend it like it's 0-0 and go from there.
Now on to my filthiest relievers. Rafael Montero had this 96-mile-an-hour gas. Hector Neris had this 94-mile-an-hour fastball. David Robertson had this hammer knuckle curve. That pitch is gorgeous. Jose Alvarado had this nasty 93-mile-an-hour cutter. Bryan Abreu dominated again, getting 2.5 Ks this inning. I mean, Harper went here, right? Abreu's going to be a dominant closer someday. Speaking of closers, Ryan Presley had this filth, getting 2 bend the knees, and picked up the save, but the real save went to McCorimick for this catch. Unbelievable in that situation. And my filthiest reliever of the day was Connor Brogdon. Even though the Phillies lost, Brogdon was brilliant, getting 5 Ks in 2 innings, thanks to his fastball and his devastating changeup. That changeup is an absolute weapon. And here's an overlay of Brogdon's fastball and changeup, and you can see how that changeup just disappears. Nasty stuff. And now, my pitching ninja moment of zen. 6'7" umpire Jordan Baker standing next to Jose Altuve is hilarious. I mean, if Altuve argued balls and strikes, he'd get a face full of Jordan Baker's balls. I also love when Baker gets down to call a pitch. I have this inner monologue in my head watching him do this. My man goes from Aaron Judge size to Jose Altuve real fast.
Judge.
Altuve.